You ever have one of those mornings where you just know the universe is about to throw a pie in somebody's face? That's how it was out at the old farm the day the HOA tried to stage a coup. Dawn hadn't even finished painting the sky, and already the rooster, Major Cluck, who struts around like he's the mayor, was going off loud enough to rattle the window panes. Grandpa was already on the porch, quilt on his knees, steam curling up from his chipped mug, giving that sunrise his usual one-eyed glare. The barn door, faded red and hanging a little crooked, groaned in the breeze, letting out the ghost of hay and diesel and every story you ever wanted to hear over a cup of black coffee. Then came the sirens. Not one, not two, but a whole parade, blue strobes skidding down the gravel, sending pebbles flying. The chickens did their usual panic scramble. Internet the goat glitched and froze, and Grandpa, well, he just raised one eyebrow and grunted, "They're early." Sheriff Dan, who's as much a fixture here as the weather vane, was nursing his own coffee. "Or we're late," he deadpanned, and clinked mugs with Grandpa like it was just another Tuesday. And I swear, the drama hit its stride right on cue. The first officer tried for a heroic stride, but the porch cat, Locust, wound around his legs and sent him windmilling. Not that it rattled Dan. He just gave a slow nod. "Morning, boys." You could see these city officers were expecting chaos, gunfire, a meth lab, anything but two old-timers, a rooster with a complex, and coffee that smelled like an IRS refund. Then, as if the morning didn't already have enough personality, a sedan squealed onto the lane like it was late for prom. Out jumped Karen. Yes, that Karen Heels. Sunglasses big enough to catch the sunrise, folder in one hand, phone in the other, live stream already rolling. "Justice has arrived," she declared, swinging her camera to the porch, pointing at Grandpa and the barn like she was calling in an airstrike. "This menace is threatening our property values," she squawked. She started rattling off infractions, illegal barn expansions, unlicensed livestock, offensive scarecrows, even hazardous lawn decor. Grandpa just pinched the bridge of his nose and asked, "Offensive how?" Karen flourished her HOA rulebook, shrieking about. Subsection 12 Bravo. All structures must be neutral, tasteful, and approved by her self-appointed board. "That your book club?" Grandpa asked, but she just sneered, "I am the board." Sheriff Dan, cool as creek water, offered her a donut, but Karen was all business. Major Cluck hopped up and let out a speech. Karen shrieked about noise terrorism, and the youngest officer had to read from a printout about insolent rooster crowing. "How does one crow politely?" Grandpa deadpanned, but Karen just snapped, like a tasteful whisper. And you could feel the crowd gathering, neighbors peeking over fences, Mrs. Alvarez shaking her head, the mailman clutching a dog treat. Even the cows and the goat looked like they had opinions. Karen launched into a closing argument worthy of a court show. "We are the last line of defense against chaos," she thundered. Scarecrows in Hawaiian shirts, wind chimes made of spoons. The wind chimes gave a polite little tinkle just then, like they were in on the joke. Grandpa just shrugged. "Ma'am, this is a farm, not a Pinterest mood board." "Noncompliance," Karen hissed, and the officers looked at each other like, "You didn't say this would be a musical." But here's where things started to tip. As the tension stretched, Karen clomped up the steps, binder quivering, and ordered the arrest. Sheriff Dan stood, slow and steady, badge catching the morning light, and stepped right up to the line between porch and yard. "Arrest him for what?" he asked, warm but iron underneath. "For the barn, for livestock." "For aesthetics," Karen shouted, but the crowd was already laughing, the kids giggling, Mrs. Alvarez rolling her eyes. "Dan," Grandpa said, "you want more coffee?" "Always," replied the sheriff. But he didn't pick it up. He just let his boots sink into the dust, the way you do when a storm's blowing in. And just as the whole circus seemed set to go nuclear, the goat, Internet, hopped up onto the porch, and Karen recoiled like he was a vampire. "Welcome to my farm," Grandpa grinned. "Don't trip on the goat. He gets jealous." He led the whole parade off the porch, officers trailing behind like lost Boy Scouts. The barn leaned proud, chicken coop flashing neon, eat EGGS. When the generator fired, sunflowers taller than the mailbox, every scarecrow sporting a different costume. Karen huffed and scoffed, but one officer muttered, "Kinda cool, though." You could see the neighbors whispering, "This isn't a crime scene. This is better than TV." There was a twist, though. Out of nowhere, another car pulled up, sleek, black, windows tinted like secrets. Out stepped Mr. Cole, HOA lawyer and all-around bringer of doom, in a suit that screamed, "Billable hours." Karen beamed. "This is Mr. Cole, our legal counsel." The crowd groaned. Everyone knew Cole, the guy who fined a kid's lemonade stand and once tried to ban Mrs. Alvarez's roses for excessive vibrancy. Cole read out bylaws with the deadpan delivery of a sleep aid. Section 12, paragraph 4, no structure may, and on, but Grandpa just grinned. "Cole, weren't you the one who fined a dog for excessive wagging?" The crowd lost it. Karen called for a tribunal, and suddenly, the barn was transformed. Hay bales for benches, a feed bucket for the judge's stand, and the rooster strutting overhead. Karen started grilling witnesses. Jenkins, the neighbor, who admitted the rooster was loud but also saved his cat. Mrs. Alvarez, who called her roses, red Carino, like roses should be, waving a rose cutting like a saber. Karen shrieked about offensive scarecrows. Grandpa pointed out Marty the accountant scarecrow in a Hawaiian shirt. The crowd started chanting, "Marty, Marty." It was a regular sitcom. And then came the bombshell. Sheriff Dan, pulling out a folded document, revealed, right there, in front of everyone, that not only was the barn a protected historic landmark, but the very land the HOA office sat on was leased from Grandpa's family. "Which makes me," Grandpa paused, savoring it, "your landlord." The place erupted, laughter, clapping, even the cows mooed in celebration. Karen sputtered, face redder than a stop sign, binder spilling papers as she stomped off through the mud. Grandpa lifted his mug to the crowd. The barn doors flung open, sunlight pouring in like an encore. "Thanks for coming to court, folks," he grinned. "Verdict's in, common sense wins." The rooster crowed, the sheriff shook his head, and as Karen's figure shrank down the lane, Grandpa called after her, "Next time, Karen, knock first. The sheriff and I like our coffee hot." So what do you think? Who was right, who was wrong? Ever had your own Karen showdown? Drop your hot take in the comments. If you got a kick out of this chaos, hit like, subscribe, and tell us what crazy HOA story you want next. Maybe next time, we'll charge admission. Let me tell you, I thought the circus was packing up, the barn doors wide, sun pouring in, folks still wiping cinnamon roll crumbs off their lips, and Karen's figure shrinking into the distance, binders swinging wild in one hand, pride trailing behind like toilet paper on a shoe. But if you thought that was the last act, you don't know Karen. Or Grandpa, for that matter. You ever notice how some storms look like they're blowing away, then come roaring back just when you put the porch chairs away? Yeah, that. The morning slipped into lazy laughter, neighbors slapping. Grandpa on the back, Mrs. Alvarez pouring what must be her fourth cup of coffee, the kids chasing Internet the goat around the tractor like it was recess on field day. The air had that after the rain sparkle, you know? Folks felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. Even the sheriff let his badge catch the sunlight, sipping cold coffee with a grin you don't see on most lawmen. But then, just as Jenkins was telling the rooster he deserved a medal for service to the community, a hush rolled over the yard. You could feel it before you saw it, like the breeze went stiff. Everyone turned as a distant rumble crept up the gravel lane. This time, it wasn't Karen. This time, it was the developer's SUV, newer, blacker, and with plates that screamed, "I don't get dirty." Out stepped Mason Ford, the kind of suit who could buy a politician with his lunch money. And sure enough, there was Karen in the passenger seat, makeup fixed, binder restuffed, the live stream back on. You could almost hear the theme music. Mason smiled the way a crocodile smiles at a duck pond. "Morning, folks. Mind if I have a word?" The crowd shuffled, nobody moving to make space. Sheriff Dan didn't even blink, just nodded real slow. Mason's voice rolled out honey smooth. "It's come to our attention." He actually said our attention like he was speaking for Congress, that certain legal irregularities may exist with this property. We intend to resolve them amicably or in court. Karen's camera zeroed in on Grandpa's face, hoping for a flinch, but Grandpa just hooked his thumbs in his suspenders and grinned. "Well, Mason, if you want to talk, you'd better speak up. My rooster don't like secrets." Major Cluck puffed up, crowing on cue like he'd rehearsed. The crowd giggled, and Mason's jaw twitched just enough for you to notice. Cute, he said. But we're serious. Our records indicate an easement for a public access road right through your hayfield. If you're not careful, this whole farm could end up under asphalt. A ripple ran through the neighbors. Even Mrs. Alvarez looked rattled, clutching her thermos tight. Public road. Grandpa echoed, scratching his chin. That's funny, Mason. My family's owned that hayfield since before you were in short pants. If there's an easement, it'd be news to the county clerk. Well, Mason smiled thin. As wire. Maybe you should read the fine print. He waved a folder fatter than Karen's binder. Now, you could feel the tension rising again, like the start of a bar fight nobody wanted but everybody saw coming. Karen started narrating for her viewers. Citizens, we are witnessing a standoff between law and lawlessness. The live stream chat was already filling up with popcorn emojis. Mason handed a paper to Sheriff Dan, who studied it a long minute, then snorted and handed it to Grandpa. Looks like a copy-paste from 3 different property deeds, he said. Ain't worth the ink. But Mason wasn't done. Listen, old man, he hissed, dropping the nice guy mask. These folks may love your circus now, but when the lawyers come, nostalgia won't pay your legal fees. And right then, from the back of the crowd, a voice rang out. Hey, Mason, remember me? It was Tommy, the local mechanic, ball cap, oil-stained hands, and, turns out, a not-so-secret city council seat. You know, I reviewed the new zoning proposals last night. That road plan of yours? Dead in committee. Seems the town likes having a farm here more than another Starbucks. The place erupted. Mason's ears turned beet red. Karen tried to turn the camera, but Tommy stepped into frame. And another thing. Turns out, the only person who's ever filed a noise complaint about this farm is you, Karen. And you don't even live on this block. The crowd gasped. Even Major Cluck crowed, then strutted away like he'd just dropped the mic. Mason sputtered. This isn't over. I've got friends in high places. Grandpa just smiled, eyes twinkling. That's all right, son. I've got roots deeper than your pockets. He sipped his coffee, cool as a mountain spring. Tell your friends they can stop. Bye. I've got enough cinnamon rolls for everyone who knocks. Karen, desperate, spun to her live stream, fishing for sympathy. But the chat was brutal. Let it go, Karen. Farm 2. HOA 0. Mason got roasted harder than the coffee. Even the kids started chanting, Goat, 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 as the internet leapt onto a hay bale and promptly ate Mason's fancy envelope. As Mason and Karen stormed off, Karen tripping in the mud, again, binder hanging by one ring. The neighbors surged around Grandpa, laughter bubbling up like soda shaken too hard. Sheriff Dan clapped him on the back. Never seen a court day end with donuts and applause, he said. You ever get tired of winning? Grandpa grinned, the kind of smile you can only earn with years of stubborn living. Not yet, Dan. Not yet. And as the sun climbed higher, the farm returned to its wild rhythm. Cows lowing, chickens fussing, kids running free, and the barn settling into that easy creak it's had for generations. But don't get me wrong. Out here, the next fight is always waiting just around the corner, and sometimes, the people trying hardest to change things are the ones most afraid of change themselves. So who's really right? The ones who build fences, or the ones who open gates? That's for you to decide. Drop your take in the comments. Ever had a neighbor try to bulldoze your peace and quiet? What would you do if someone threatened your home? And if you stuck around this long, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share your wildest HOA stories. Because you know what? Out here, the coffee's always on, and the stories just keep getting better.